Behind the laughter, the cast of the Beverly Hillbillies faced a reality no one saw coming. Hidden illnesses, bitter feuds, and tragedies that unfolded far from the spotlight. One star collapsed in the middle of a Broadway performance. Another chased a political dream that ended in public humiliation. What really happened after the show ended in 1971? And why did so many of its beloved stars meet such shocking fates? Stay with me, because the truth behind TV's favorite family is far darker than anyone ever expected. Buddy Ebsen as Jed Clampett. After the Beverly Hillbillies ended in 1971, Buddy Ebsen could have easily stepped away. He was already 63 and had spent nearly a decade as Jed Clampett. But instead of retiring, he reinvented himself. In 1973, he surprised audiences by taking on a completely different role as Barnaby Jones, a sharp and determined private investigator solving his own son's murder. The show became a major hit, running for 8 years, with Buddy appearing in all 178 episodes, proving he was far from finished. Even after Barnaby Jones ended in 1980, he kept working well into his later years. He starred in TV films like Fire on the Mountain, 1981, and Stone Fox, 1986, had a recurring role in Matt Houston, and incredibly, made a voice cameo in King of the Hill in 1999 at age 91. His career spanned decades, something very few actors ever achieve. Outside of acting, Buddy had many passions. He was an accomplished sailor who designed his own catamaran, Polynesian concept, and even won a 125-mile race from Newport Beach to Ensenada in 1968. He also wrote more than 80 songs and created stage plays, showing a creative side that went far beyond television. Later in life, he chose a quieter lifestyle, settling on Balboa Island near the ocean he loved. Buddy remained active and full of stories well into his 90s. He even appeared on Larry King Live for his 93rd birthday, still sharp and engaging. He passed away on July 6, 2003, at the age of 95. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated to be around $2 million, a modest figure compared to today's stars, but a reflection of a long, steady career built on talent, reinvention, and passion. Donna Douglas as Ellie Mae Clampett. Donna Douglas became a household name as Ellie Mae Clampett on the Beverly Hillbillies, but her life after the show took a very different and unexpected direction. When the series ended in April 1971, she was offered another big opportunity in Hollywood, a soap opera that could have extended her fame. Instead, she walked away. Just a few months later, she traveled to Israel, where she had a powerful spiritual experience that changed the course of her life and led her toward Christian ministry. Leaving Hollywood behind, Donna reinvented herself as a gospel singer and inspirational speaker. She released her first album, Donna Douglas Sings Gospel, in 1982, which sold around 50,000 copies, followed by several more albums throughout the decade. During this time, she also revealed a private struggle she had kept hidden for years, battling a serious eating disorder while on the show. She later said her faith played a key role in her recovery. In the years that followed, Donna explored many different paths. She briefly tried real estate, but quickly realized it wasn't for her. Instead, she focused on writing, publishing Donna's Critters and Kids in 1993, which sold over 100,000 copies, along with other books and even a cookbook that blended Southern recipes with stories from her Hollywood days. In 2011, she made headlines again after filing a $75 million lawsuit against Mattel and CBS over an Ellie Mae Barbie doll, a case that was eventually settled out of court. Donna remained deeply connected to her fans and protective of the legacy of Ellie Mae. She even turned down a chance to reprise the role in a planned film, believing it wasn't the right fit. At one of her final public appearances in 2014, she revealed she had carefully kept all of Ellie Mae's original costumes over the years. Donna passed away on January 1, 2015, at the age of 82. Irene Ryan as Granny, Daisy Moses. After the Beverly Hillbillies ended in 1971, Irene Ryan's life took a dramatic turn. At 68, retirement was the last thing on her mind. Instead of staying in television, she returned to live theater, joining a demanding national tour of Pippin later that year. Performing 8 shows a week across 30 cities was no small feat, but Irene's energy and discipline impressed everyone. Playing Berta, she quickly became a standout, with her song No Time at All earning standing ovations night after night. Her Broadway debut came in October 1972, and audiences were amazed to see her transform from Granny into a powerful stage performer. Critics praised her work, and in March 1973, she received a Tony Award nomination, one of the biggest honors of her career. But just as everything seemed to peak, tragedy struck. During a performance on March 10, 1973, Irene collapsed on stage. She insisted on finishing the show, but soon after, doctors diagnosed her with an aggressive brain tumor, glioblastoma. Even as she faced devastating news, her performance continued to receive praise. Sadly, Irene never made it to the Tony Award ceremony. She passed away on April 26, 1973, at the age of 70, only weeks after being on stage, leaving fans and colleagues in shock. Before her death, Irene made sure her legacy would live on. She left more than $1 million to establish the Irene Ryan Foundation, which provides scholarships to young actors. Since then, it has supported thousands of aspiring performers, turning her final act into something that continues to shape the future of theater. Max Baer Jr. as Jethro Bodine. Max Baer Jr. was born on December 4, 1937, in Oakland, California, and rose to fame as Jethro Bodine on the Beverly Hillbillies. The role made him a star, but it also became a label he couldn't escape. When the show ended in 1971, Max struggled to find new acting work because audiences only saw him as Jethro. Despite having a business degree and plenty of talent, Hollywood didn't take him seriously, and for several years he barely found any roles. Financially, things weren't easy either. At the height of the show's success, Max was earning just $800 per episode, far less than what stars of hit series make today. With acting opportunities drying up, he decided to take control of his future. In 1974, he wrote, produced, and starred in Macon County Line, a low-budget film that cost just over $100,000 to make, but went on to earn an incredible $35 million. He followed that success with Ode to Billy Joe in 1976, which also performed strongly at the box office, proving he had real business instincts. Never afraid to think big, Max later pursued an ambitious idea: a Beverly Hillbillies-themed casino inspired by the show's popularity. The project took decades of planning, reflecting his persistence and creative vision. But his life wasn't without tragedy. In 2000, he suffered a devastating personal loss when his girlfriend, Cher Rhodes, died by suicide, a moment that brought both grief and intense media attention. Even though the role of Jethro both made and limited him, Max refused to let it define his entire life. He turned that fame into new opportunities while continuing to prove himself beyond acting. Today, at 88 years old, he remains the last surviving main cast member of the Beverly Hillbillies, carrying with him both the legacy and the complicated reality of a role that changed everything. Nancy Culp as Jane Hathaway. Nancy Culp became a household name as Miss Jane Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies, but her life after the show was far more complex than her on-screen role. Behind the polished character was a woman who faced setbacks, took risks, and quietly stood by her beliefs. In 1984, at 62, Nancy made a bold move. She ran for Congress in Pennsylvania's 9th District. A Democrat in a largely Republican area, she campaigned on issues like education and environmental protection, believing she could make a real difference. She even told voters that if Ronald Reagan could transition from acting to politics, so could she. But the campaign took a painful turn when her former co-star Buddy Ebsen publicly backed her opponent, calling her too liberal in a radio ad. The betrayal hit hard, and Nancy lost the race by a wide margin. The rift between them lasted for years, though they eventually reconciled shortly before her death. Financially, Nancy's later years were difficult. Despite earning $5,000 per episode during the show's run, it wasn't enough to secure long-term stability. After the series ended, acting opportunities paid far less, and by the 1980s, she was struggling, especially after being diagnosed with cancer. Living quietly in Palm Springs, she taught acting and relied on residuals from reruns to get by. Nancy kept her personal life very private. She had been married briefly in the 1950s but rarely spoke about it, once saying, "Some doors are better left unopened." She was also an early supporter of civil rights and LGBTQ+ causes, later confiding to close friends that she was a lesbian, though she never publicly addressed it during her lifetime. After her political defeat, Nancy found new purpose in teaching. In 1985, she joined Juniata College, where she taught drama, directed plays, and spoke about the portrayal of women in media. Students admired her for being both demanding and deeply supportive. Though she made a few later TV appearances, including The New Love Boat in 1989, teaching became her true passion. Nancy Culp passed away on February 3, 1991, at the age of 69. Today, she's remembered not just as Miss Jane Hathaway, but as a woman who faced disappointment with resilience, stood firm in her beliefs, and lived a life far richer than the role that made her famous. Raymond Bailey as Milburn Drysdale. After the Beverly Hillbillies ended in 1971, Raymond Bailey's life took a quiet and difficult turn. For nearly a decade, he had played the sharp and anxious banker Milburn Drysdale, but once the show was canceled, opportunities quickly faded. Already in his late 60s, he struggled to find new roles, appearing briefly in Disney films like Herbie Rides Again, 1974, and The Strongest Man in the World, 1975, often cast in similar authority figures. Not long after, he stepped away from acting, but it wasn't by choice. During the show's final years, Bailey had begun showing signs of Alzheimer's disease. The condition worsened rapidly, and by 1976, he could no longer recognize close friends. His wife, Gabby George, cared for him as he withdrew from public life, spending his final years quietly between a houseboat and a small home in Laguna Niguel. Financially, things became increasingly difficult. Despite starring in one of television's biggest hits, Bailey hadn't earned the kind of long-term wealth actors receive today. With limited residuals and rising medical costs, his savings slowly disappeared. It was a painful contrast to the character he played, someone obsessed with protecting money and status. Bailey passed away on April 15, 1980, at the age of 75 from a heart attack. He chose not to have a public funeral, and his ashes were scattered at sea. His passing received little attention at the time, but his portrayal of Mr. Drysdale endured. Decades later, in 2019, the American Bankers Association honored him for making banking feel human and even humorous, an unexpected legacy for a man whose final years were so quietly lived. Harriet McGibbon as Margaret Drysdale. Harriet E. McGibbon became widely known as the sharp-tongued Margaret Drysdale on the Beverly Hillbillies, but her life after the show was far more complicated. When the series ended in 1971, she was already 66 and had spent decades in entertainment. She continued acting for a few more years, taking on smaller roles in TV films and shows like Bewitched and Mannix, but found it frustrating to be typecast, especially after her earlier success in Shakespearean theater. The 1970s brought personal and financial struggles. In 1977, her only son, William, passed away at just 44 after battling depression, a loss that deeply affected her. She quietly created a scholarship in his name, but rarely spoke about it. At the same time, poor investments left her with limited finances, and her health declined due to COPD, forcing her to live a more isolated life. One lesser-known part of Harriet's story was her remarkable family history. Her great-grandfather, Dr. Eleazar Deming, had helped enslaved people escape through the Underground Railroad, even hiding some in fake coffins. Though she rarely spoke about it, she later donated his journals to preserve that legacy. In her final years, Harriet lived quietly in Beverly Hills, cared for by a nurse. She still attended occasional events, including a Beverly Hillbillies reunion in 1985, though her health limited her time there. She passed away in 1987 at the age of 81, choosing a simple farewell with her ashes placed at Forest Lawn Cemetery. While many remember her as Mrs. Drysdale, Harriet's life extended far beyond that role. From early innovations in radio and theater to her resilience through personal loss, she left behind a legacy that was both meaningful and quietly powerful. Bea Benaderet as cousin Pearl Bodine. Bea Benaderet played cousin Pearl Bodine on the Beverly Hillbillies, and even though she appeared in only 22 episodes during the first season, she quickly became a fan favorite. Her final episode aired in October 1963. Officially, she left to star in a new show, Petticoat Junction, but the reality behind her departure was far more complicated. At the time, Bea was quietly dealing with serious health issues. She had been diagnosed with a tumor in her left lung, but chose not to tell anyone, even as the show became a huge success. Around that same period, creator Paul Henning offered her a difficult choice: stay as Cousin Pearl or take the lead role in Petticoat Junction. CBS even tried to keep her by offering to double her salary, but Bea honored her commitment and moved on to the new series. The transition wasn't easy at first, as she struggled to separate herself from Pearl's voice and mannerisms, but her talent ultimately carried the show to success. Behind the scenes, however, her health continued to decline. In 1967, she underwent surgery, only to learn that her lung cancer had spread and was no longer treatable. Despite her condition, Bea kept working for as long as she could. Her final appearance aired in September 1968, with only her voice used. Just weeks later, on October 13, 1968, she passed away. Before her death, her former co-star Buddy Ebsen visited her, and he later shared her heartbreaking final words: "Tell Pearl I said goodbye." Her passing deeply affected fans, especially since Petticoat Junction initially avoided addressing her death on screen. Still, her legacy endured. Through her son Jack Bannon's appearance on the Beverly Hillbillies as a tribute, and later honors recognizing her work in radio and animation. Though her time on the show was brief, Bea's impact was lasting. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to stay updated on future content. We hope you found this story insightful. See you in the next video. Goodbye.